Hi, Marc Warnke here. I have found over my decade plus of raising babies, and we raise a lot of them, that there are really four things that consistently kill babies. And so I want to do a series on that so that I can educate you in totality about how to handle and how to recognize the four most common things. I walk every one of the people who come through our barns to get babies from us through this. And it's very important to be able to recognize and respond well with these little babies because they get tipped over so quickly. So it's important to know these four things. There is one that's a fifth, and I'm just going to quickly mention it because most people who are new to goats or picking up new babies don't ever deal with Floppy Baby. And Floppy Baby is like a 0 to 10 day old disorder. And when it shows up, just so you know, they are exactly as they describe. They're floppy. They're not able to move. They just all of a sudden just go down and become they're alive, and they can actually still kind of drink if you support them, but it's drinking milk that's making them sick. When they studied it, they didn't actually know what happened. They ended up with that study saying, we don't know why it happens, we don't know, but here's the things that have a tendency to help it out, and that's as far as we're going to study it. So it was kind of interesting how Floppy Baby, the research went behind it. What we've discovered is that the key is to stop feeding them. You have to stop feeding them for 24 to 48 hours, which is always the hardest thing to do for a little guy that you think's struggling. But you'll see if you stop feeding them and you just drench them with a little baking soda, and Pepto-Bismol, that it helps them to deal with their stomach issue that they're dealing with. It's like an acidosis combination. It's a lot of biochemistry in there, but what it ends up doing is that you need to stop feeding them, drench them 1 or 2 times a day with a little bit of baking soda and a little bit of Pepto-Bismol. Once they recover, then you feed them very slowly and kind of bring them back in. And Floppy Baby is difficult to recognize because it looks similar to goat polio, so I don't mention that in my list of 4, but I want to mention that now. So let's talk about the first real one that most people deal with, which is the simplest and the least lethal, but everybody deals with it or almost with baby goats, and that's diarrhea. Now remember, diarrhea takes weeks to die from. Your biggest risk with diarrhea, which almost is always as a result of 2 things, it's either coccidia or a stomach bacteria. About 90% of the time it's coccidia. You will deal with coccidia on your ranch, so it's important that you consider that you have a strategy to deal with coccidia. We advise that you use SMZs to overcome diarrhea. But here's our protocol once diarrhea shows up. Now remember, again, diarrhea is not an immediate death scenario. You have time, and you can look at a baby goat wrong and they'll get diarrhea. So you never want to react to day 1 diarrhea. If you get diarrhea, just observe it. Day 1, has diarrhea. Day 2, they still have diarrhea. I give 4 milliliters of Pepto-Bismol. If that doesn't improve the situation by day 3, I go ahead and start administering anti-coccidia and antibacteria meds, which is SMZs, and they're really easy. It's a big pill. You liquefy it in the bottle of milk that they're drinking, and they drink it. Now, the key with arresting that diarrhea stage fast is, number 1, if it is coccidia, which it most likely is, those protozoa are doing damage to the inside of those intestinal walls, and you want to stop the process as quickly as possible. Number 2 is if you do have a gut bacteria, that's actually quite a bit more serious and dire and goes more quickly, and you're also treating for that. So you don't have to try to, because they both display their symptoms very similarly, and it's easy just to give them an SMZ because the downside is almost nothing. So it's 1 big pill in their bottle, 5 days in a row, just 1 dose, and they will be tip-top. Diarrhea will stop on day 2 or 3. You want to finish the cycle, and they do really well with it, and they bounce right back, and I give them a little probiotics. So that's how you handle kind of the first one in the series of issues. And the key that you want to remember with diarrhea is make sure that you are treating before they'll stop drinking, because eventually they'll get enough of a stomach ache when they have diarrhea that they'll not want to drink anymore. And as soon as they don't want to drink, now you're shoving stuff down their throat rather than having them still drink and drink their medicine. It's a much easier and quicker way to treat a goat with diarrhea. So I hope you find that helpful. Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4 are coming up. So again, hope you find that helpful. Marc Warnke, the Goat Guy. Don't forget, you can get all the information that you hear about here in our courses and in our Goat Club membership. They are invaluable if you're trying to raise goats. Goats are hard until somebody shows you. So I hope you let me show you. Take care. Bye-bye.